Meanwhile, Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan confirms that there will not be any increase in fares for commuters using the PTSC buses, despite an increase in the price of fuel. Since the announcement by Finance Minister Colm Imbert, several associations have announced their intention to adjust their fares on April 19th, saying they would not be able to absorb the increase in fuel prices. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, Minister Sinanan says there has been no such discussion with the PTSC, noting that prices will remain as is for now.
There will obviously, for the buses that work with the diesel, there will be an increased cost to the PTSC for that. However, going forward, PTSC fleet, we are looking at the electric fleet. We have just commissioned a CNG station as well in Port of Spain. So we are looking at alternative modes of fueling the buses, but at this point in time, there's no consideration of any increase in the cost of transportation by PTSC.
Mr. Sinanan adds that electric buses are being considered for purchase, which would ease the burden of fuel costs for PTSC.
The government is looking in terms now of acquiring 300 buses. Only this morning I had to speak to the team that is negotiating that, and we are looking in terms of going into the electric buses. So yes, there will be some increase to PTSC, but as we're all aware, PTSC is a heavily subsidized transport system, and our aim is to make that mode of transportation the number one mode of transportation, but it has to be a lot more efficient.
Meanwhile, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Taxi Drivers Association, Adrian Acosta, says they will break their silence later this week regarding government's impending increase in the price of fuel. In mid-March, Mr. Acosta had indicated that taxi drivers would have to adjust their fares if government moves ahead of increasing fuel prices. His comments came after Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley had said during conversations with the Prime Minister that the population cannot be insulated from worldwide changes in energy prices. Mr. Acosta told TTT News the association would make an announcement on Thursday. But in March, he had stated that taxi drivers would not be carrying the burden of any fuel subsidy removal.
In other news, President General of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, ANCEL ROGET, says the increase in motor fuel prices will have a rippling effect on the economy. Speaking at a media conference on Tuesday, Mr. ROGET said the increase announced by Finance Minister Colm Imbert represents the fourth fuel price hike since the government took office in 2015. Mr. ROGET said the price hike is expected to bring hardship and difficulty to the population.
Because once fuel cost is raised, transportation costs for goods and services is also raised. The cost of living raised. And when things raise in this country, prices and cost of living and so on, it never comes back down. The only thing that is not raising in this country is the wages of poor and suffering people.
Mr. ROGET said based on the decreased levels of oil production, the union developed a proposal to increase crude oil production levels. He said the information was sent to the Minister of Finance, Colm Imbert, 3 weeks ago.
We would have finalized and put together a proposal to look at abandoned wells, idle wells, non-productive wells, wells that are not in use. A number of those wells in heritage, based on the information that we have, we would have come up with a proposal to increase heritage crude oil production, where the country would benefit.
Mr. ROGET said the OWTU's plan to increase the country's oil production levels comes at no cost to the government. Finance Minister Colm Imbert has maintained that increases in the price of gas are never easy to absorb and that the price of gas in Trinidad and Tobago is the second lowest out of 13 Caribbean countries in 2022.
With the price of fuel set to increase next week, one oil and gas consultant is saying this is just the start of government fully lifting the fuel subsidy. Antonio Declan Ross says it was exactly 1 year ago the Finance Minister signaled his intention to begin the removal of this subsidy.
There's an expectation that these increases will be taking place as time go by due to the removal of the subsidy. So it's not, there's no good timing for something like this, but it has to be done.
However, Mr. Ross adds this is only a partial lifting of the subsidy since government is still spending over $850 million on the allocation.
This money can then be channeled, for example, into social support services and revenue generating projects such as incentives to small and medium business enterprises. It's a large amount of money. It's at the tune of around $1 billion.
Mr. Ross made his remarks during an interview on the Now Morning Show on Tuesday.